a small group. Now, if you haven't listened to the structure question, you've got to listen to that first, or you're going to think I'm a heretic and you're just not going to like me very much. But let's go to this question: who can lead a small group? Now, to answer that question, you have to answer the question, what is the most critical attribute somebody has to have in order to lead a small group? Now, if you have time, you can kind of survey some people and ask that question. But as I've done this to thousands and thousands of people at conferences, they're going to come up with things like character, follower of Christ, teachable, passionate, and a number of other attributes that we want. But I would challenge you on this part of the question. The most critical aspect for someone to lead a small group is not the things that you're probably thinking about offhand, but the most critical thing is do they have followers? Because if you have a leader who doesn't have followers, they're just taking a walk. They literally don't have anybody. Now, I know you haven't done this, but for so many years of my small group ministry, I would get people who would want to lead a small group, and they would go to every training, they'd fill out every form, they would go to every interview, they'd do everything I would ask them to do. But what they would do at the end of all that, they would go, now send people to my small group. And what happened is we created lots of small groups that were almost dependent on the church. That's called a governmental system. But what you want to do is start to discover the people that already have followers. Now, when your guardrails are in place, when you have a pathway, you have an end in mind. What do you do with the person at a campaign or when you're teaching on a relevant topic and they come out to you and they say, I want to lead a small group. I have 2 friends who will do this with me. Now, most churches would say no if you're not a follower of Christ. And what I'd ask you to do is follow me through this. If 2 people who don't know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and they come up to us after a parenting series, and they come up and they say, we have 2 friends, we'd like to start a group. And we have our video curriculum in place for them that says, and one of our most popular ones is, how to raise kids without raising your blood pressure. Because it's pertinent for a follower of Christ and not a follower of Christ. It's pertinent for any family member. Or when we do any one of our campaigns that has a relevant felt need question that people are trying to answer. When someone comes up to us and they say, I have 2 friends and I want to start a group, 100 out of 100 times we'll say, go ahead, you can start it with your friends. Because a couple things are in play, and there's 2 myths that we don't believe. Myth number 1 that we don't believe is we don't believe they're a sleeper cell trying to destroy our church. The second myth that we don't believe is that they're going to take the moral integrity of their group down. Because with a video curriculum and their friends are probably not followers of Christ. And so the moral integrity of the group isn't going to go anywhere but up through the video curriculum. And so what happens is when we have people that attend Saddleback who just love our church, they may not be followers of Christ. If they want to start a small group and they have followers, we'll help them start a group. Because the heart guardrail, the first question they're always asking themselves is, do they need to know Christ, or do they need to know training, or do they need to know both? And they'll start the relationship that way. Now, for those of you who aren't believers, let me just give you this scenario. If 2 to 3 non-believers came to your weekend service, watched your weekend service, and went out to lunch and talked about it, would that be okay? Every senior pastor I talk to says that will be okay. What I just described to you with 2 friends is no different, because the weekend message is a small group curriculum, and the discussion we're even helping to guide. But one step better is I know who's leading the groups, because when they pick up the curriculum, they're giving us contact information so we can start a journey to help them get closer to Jesus Christ. Now, this may sound bizarre, but strategically what we do in all of our video curriculums, no matter what it is, around week 2 or 3, we always make sure that there's a call to Christ in there. Because I can't tell you the number of people that I've met, when I talk to them and ask them, where did you get saved? They'll say, in my small group. So before you say you don't have enough small group leaders in your church, I would want to ask you, do you have people in your church that have 2 friends? Because if you do, we have a process called a campaign strategy that can help you mobilize them.